The alien commander, Hawks Talvek of the Drazkar Dominion, sat at his throne aboard the ship Zarnok's Glory, his glittering black eyes gleaming with pride as he surveyed the delegation of human soldiers before him. Flanked by shimmering holographic banners of the Dominion, the massive alien throne room pulsed with a blood-red light that cast shadows along the walls. His menacing grin exposed a row of jagged teeth, each one gleaming with the oily sheen of venom. Captain Keller of the United Earth Defense Force, clad in military fatigues and with a face as steely as his voice, stood resolute, unfazed by the grandeur or the intimidating presence of Talvek. Behind him, his second-in-command, Lieutenant Brianna Marks, kept her eyes focused and unwavering, the very model of human determination. A subtle tremor ran through the ranks of the alien soldiers lining the walls, as if they could sense a strange power in these humans that defied their unassuming appearance. "So these are Earth's best," Talvek mocked, his words dripping with derision. "I had hoped for something more impressive." He gestured with a talon-tipped hand, urging one of his warriors forward. The massive alien, over 8 feet tall and clad in armor as dark as night, shoved a human-made rifle to the floor at Talvek's feet. The weapon looked absurdly small in comparison to the monstrous Drazkar soldier. Liam didn't flinch. "It might look like scrap to you," he said calmly, "but that rifle's seen more battles than you can count." Talvek let out a hissing laugh. "Do you believe these primitive metal sticks can stand against the might of the Drazkar Dominion? Do you even understand the technology we wield, human?" "Enough to know you're wrong, if you think that's all we have," Liam replied, the steel in his voice unwavering. "We don't just rely on guns." The alien commander's eyes glittered with contempt as he pressed on. "Oh? And what could Earth possibly have that would shake the resolve of a true warrior? An army of rodents, perhaps? A parade of your laughable vehicles?" Liam's gaze didn't waver. "If you're so confident, then let us show you." Talvek tilted his head, his amusement turning to curiosity. "Very well," he sneered, "but I warn you, human, your pathetic attempts at warfare will amuse me. Nothing more." Turning, Liam exchanged a brief nod with Brianna. "Let's begin the demonstration." The humans had chosen an open stretch on an abandoned desert world near the edge of Dominion territory for the demonstration. As they assembled, the Drazkar soldiers lounged in the shadow of their towering war machines, each one pulsing with energy fields and weapons systems that shimmered with terrifying intensity. Talvek stood at the edge of his observation platform, a smirk tugging at his wide, venomous mouth as he watched the humans unpack their gear. First came the standard-issue rifles, and Talvek rolled his eyes as the human soldiers took aim at nearby rock formations. With a steady hand, each soldier hit their mark with unerring precision, their bullets chipping away at the rocks. "A child's plaything," Talvek muttered. "Our personal shields would absorb those toys without so much as a scratch." The humans moved on to grenade launchers, setting up a controlled explosion that sent chunks of rock flying. The display was competent, even efficient, but Talvek remained unimpressed. He let out a low chuckle, shaking his head. "You're pathetic." But then, with the faintest of hums, a larger vehicle rolled into view. It was an armored personnel carrier heavily fortified, durable, and unmistakably formidable in its appearance. Even some of Talvek's soldiers murmured in mild surprise as the machine moved forward. It wasn't the massive war machine they were used to, but there was a sturdy quality to it that caught their attention. Talvek raised an eyebrow, an amused snort escaping him. "And what is this lumbering thing supposed to be? I could knock it over with a single arm." But as the carrier stopped and the soldiers inside began unloading a heavier weapon, Talvek's smugness started to falter. With a hiss of hydraulics and a mechanical clank, the humans unveiled the true centerpiece of their demonstration, a towering vehicle, its turret gleaming in the harsh desert sun. Its treads were wide and robust, crushing the rock beneath with an audible crunch as it rolled into place. Its cannon was massive, a long, heavy barrel that radiated the aura of latent destruction. It was a tank. Talvek's laugh turned into a quiet murmur as he saw the imposing shape. The tank's heavy armor plating and the fierce glint in its turret made it a machine that didn't simply look ready for war, it looked built to crush everything in its path. Talvek sneered, fighting his unease. "What is that monstrosity?" "That's a tank," Liam replied. "And it's just the beginning." Talvek rolled his eyes, though his laughter was now hesitant. "Very well. Show me what this tank can do." Liam gave the order, and the tank's massive cannon swiveled, aiming at a distant boulder field. With a crackling sound, the cannon fired, unleashing a shell that screamed across the desert before slamming into its target. The explosion was monumental, sending a shockwave that rippled through the ground. Dust and debris erupted into the air, and a ring of flame spread from the impact zone. Talvek's soldiers staggered back, visibly unnerved as the echoes of the blast reverberated through the canyon. It was a force they hadn't anticipated from what they'd dismissed as a primitive human machine. Talvek's smile had vanished. He turned to Liam, his brow furrowing. "So the humans know how to make big explosions. That's hardly." Before he could finish, the tank fired again, this time aimed at a ridge where Dominion soldiers were positioned as a formality. They scrambled, barely escaping as the shell exploded, shaking the very ground beneath their feet. Liam's calm voice cut through the smoke and chaos. "This isn't just for explosions, Commander Talvek. It's for breaking through defenses, even ones you think are impenetrable." With a surge of anger, Talvek gestured to his officers. "Bring forward our plasma cannons. Let's see how this tank holds up against Dominion firepower." From the ranks of Drazkar warriors, massive cannons were brought forward. Each one was mounted on the back of towering, crab-like drones that emitted a faint, eerie glow. The plasma cannons fired in bursts, sending streams of searing energy across the battlefield. The tank's armor absorbed the first few impacts, the metal hissing as it dissipated the energy, and then began to move, picking up speed as it maneuvered around the plasma fire. It was a feat Talvek hadn't expected. He had assumed that once struck, the human tank would be immobilized. But it was still moving advancing toward his troops. A ripple of shock spread through the Drazkar ranks. Talvek's commanders exchanged uneasy glances, their confidence shaken as the tank continued its relentless approach. The humans inside the vehicle were calculating every angle, outmaneuvering the plasma cannons with impressive precision. Talvek clenched his jaw. "So you've built a resilient machine," he growled, his voice now carrying an edge of irritation. "But resilience is not enough." He barked an order to his officers, and soon 3 towering mechs, bristling with Dominion weaponry, stomped onto the battlefield. Each one stood nearly 20 feet tall, with massive plasma launchers and laser arrays that could level a small mountain. Yet, as the mechs advanced, the human tank didn't retreat. Instead, it angled its cannon upward, aimed precisely, and fired at the lead mech. The shell impacted the mech's arm, shearing it off in a shower of sparks and sending it crashing to the ground. The Drazkar troops looked on in astonishment as the once proud mech floundered, its remaining limbs attempting to regain balance. Talvek's amusement had turned to outright rage. "Enough," he bellowed. "Destroy that tank. I want nothing left of it." The 3 remaining mechs converged on the tank, unloading volleys of energy weapons, but the tank's operators were well trained, adjusting their position, ducking and weaving between the rocks with surprising agility for such a massive vehicle. Lieutenant Marks directed the fire with uncanny precision, each shell launched with surgical accuracy, taking out critical points on the mechs and forcing them back. Talvek, his fists clenched and face twisted with fury, watched as one of his best mechs crumbled under another strike from the tank. The hulking war machine collapsed, its plasma cannon sparking and malfunctioning, its once intimidating silhouette now a smoking wreck. This time, Talvek didn't mock. He knew he was witnessing something he had vastly underestimated. Liam's voice crackled over the communication channel, calm but laced with authority. "Commander Talvek, this is what we're capable of. And believe me, we're holding back." Talvek took a step back, his mind racing. The confidence that had once filled his chest felt dangerously hollow as he realized the implications of what he'd just witnessed. These humans were not the primitive creatures he believed them to be. They were dangerous, resourceful, and they had more power than he had imagined. Swallowing his pride, he returned to the communication panel. "Captain Keller," he said, his voice steadying, "you've made your point. But the Dominion does not surrender." Liam's face appeared on Talvek's monitor, calm and resolute. Then you'd better be prepared to see more than just a tank, Commander. Talvek hesitated. He knew the threat was real, yet something inside him rebelled against the notion of backing down. Still, the fear in his soldiers' eyes, the destruction of his mechs, and the unshaken resolve of the humans before him all whispered a truth he could no longer ignore. Perhaps Talvek said slowly, "It's time we discuss a different type of agreement." As silence fell over the desert, Liam's calm voice echoed in the command chamber. "We'd be open to that, Commander. But understand this is just the beginning." Talvek seethed, clenching his fists as he stared at the smoldering remains of his mechs and soldiers. The offer for negotiations should have felt humiliating, but he couldn't deny the edge of fear that had crept into his heart. The Dominion hadn't faced a true rival in millennia, and now these humans with their raw, unrefined technology and audacious tactics had not only survived a Dominion encounter but had managed to dismantle his most elite mechs in full view of his soldiers. Talvek took a deep breath and forced his voice to sound as imperious as ever. "Captain Keller," he began, voice strained, "the Dominion does not negotiate with lesser beings." His pride struggled against the truth he now knew these humans were not mere insects, but an adversary who could upend Dominion rule. He glanced at his officers, noting the pale sheen of their fear under the dim lights of the command bridge. Liam's face hardened, and his voice turned to steel. "Commander Talvek, if we were lesser beings, your army wouldn't be scattered across this battlefield. Now let's save lives while we still can, or we'll be forced to introduce you to the rest of our arsenal." For a moment, Talvek's blood chilled at the thought. If a single tank could do this much damage, what else could they bring forth? But he was still a proud warrior, and as his gaze swept over the silent, uneasy ranks of his troops, a surge of resentment flared. He could not be cowed by these humans. Enough of this, he snarled, his voice echoing with forced bravado. "You may have your machines, Captain Keller, but the Dominion's might is limitless. I won't stand here and be lectured by A." At that instant, an alert flared across his control panel. His officers looked up, faces turning a sickly green, as one of the Dominion's larger dreadnoughts, the Iron Talon, reported an impact on its shields from unknown sources. Commander and officer shouted, panic seeping into his voice. "We're receiving fire from another human formation in aerial assault." Talvek's eyes went wide as he stared at the screen. High in the atmosphere, a formation of sleek, dark shapes streaked toward his ships, moving with uncanny speed and precision. Fighter jets, smaller and far more agile than any Dominion ship, cut through the skies like swarming insects, weaving through the anti-air defenses of his fleet with alarming ease. Liam's voice crackled through the comms again, steady as ever. "You asked to see our capabilities, Commander. These fighters represent only a fraction of what Earth's defense force can bring to a fight, and we have more than a few ways to end this battle quickly." Talvek gritted his teeth, feeling his authority slip with every report. Each passing second only increased the vulnerability of his fleet, as the human jets expertly dodged incoming plasma bursts, firing concentrated missiles into key structural points on his larger ships. A ripple of explosions flared as the Iron Talon's engines faltered, sending it into a slow, smoking descent. "I demand an explanation," Talvek shouted, fighting the panic that now laced his words. "How did these primitive vessels evade our defenses?" "It's simple," Commander Liam replied, his tone taking on a dangerous edge. "We adapt, and we know how to hit where it hurts." The words stung Talvek like a whip. The humans had tailored their strikes to his fleet's weaknesses with an efficiency he'd never seen in an enemy. As if sensing his anger, Liam continued. "We've studied your ship's vulnerabilities for years, Commander. We know how the Dominion likes to operate, how your commanders strategize, and how you underestimate anyone you think is inferior." Talvek's voice cracked, but the echoes of his anger fell on silent, uncertain ears. His soldiers were shaken, their loyalty wavering as they witnessed the terrifying, effective power of Earth's forces. Liam's words, sharp and cold, cut through the stillness. "This is the last chance, Commander Talvek. Stand down or face the full force of the Earth Defense Fleet." Talvek's eyes flickered to his soldiers. Their loyalty was undeniable, but he could see doubt pooling in their eyes, uncertainty that the Dominion's legendary power could withstand this unexpected assault. He sensed the delicate line he was walking. One wrong move, one refusal to adapt, and his fleet might break. In a desperate attempt to salvage his pride and authority, Talvek glared back at the screen. "Captain Keller, perhaps you believe this display will sway me, but I assure you, you cannot intimidate the Drazkar Dominion. Our technology is supreme, our force is limitless." "Then explain why we're still here," Liam replied calmly, his steady gaze like a challenge. "If you're so supreme, why haven't you destroyed us yet?" Talvek's jaw clenched, his mind racing. He hadn't expected to be put in such a corner. But surrendering outright was unthinkable, a shame that would haunt him and taint his family name across the Dominion. One of Talvek's advisors, a seasoned warrior named Orak, approached quietly, his voice low and hesitant. "Commander, perhaps a temporary ceasefire would allow us to regroup. It would not be surrender." Talvek shot him a look of contempt, though Orak's suggestion planted a seed of consideration. A ceasefire could be framed as a strategic retreat, one that preserved Dominion strength while giving him time to analyze the human capabilities. And it would give his troops a sliver of hope, an indication that he hadn't lost control. With a grudging sigh, Talvek turned back to the communication panel. "Very well, Captain Keller," he spat. "A temporary ceasefire. But understand this, the Drazkar Dominion does not retreat out of fear. This is a strategic maneuver." "Whatever lets you sleep at night," Liam replied, his voice cool and unfazed. "Now, stand down. Our fighters will hold position, but if we see any movement from your ships that doesn't align with the ceasefire, we'll consider it an act of aggression." Talvek's face flushed, his pride smoldering beneath his forced composure, but he nodded. Understood. The screen went dark, leaving Talvek in tense silence. His officers stood around him, their faces marked with a mix of disbelief and anxiety. Commander Orak murmured, stepping forward cautiously. "Do you believe the humans will truly honor the ceasefire?" Talvek's lip curled in disdain, his pride struggling against the fear gnawing at him. "They would be fools not to," he said, though his voice lacked the usual confidence. "And if they don't, I'll have every ship in this fleet ready to turn them to ash." Orak nodded, though his face showed no reassurance. He glanced at the monitor displaying the human formation, their ships still holding position just beyond the perimeter, like wolves circling a wounded animal. Meanwhile, aboard the human command ship, the Resolute, Liam exchanged a nod with Lieutenant Marks, who was overseeing the fighter squadron's formation. The two shared a moment of silent triumph. "Think he'll hold to the ceasefire?" Marks asked, her voice low. Liam glanced at the monitor, where Talvek's forces were now visibly retreating to a safe distance, the damage to their fleet all too apparent. "He has no choice," he replied. "We've given him an out. Let's see if he takes it." Marks nodded, a flicker of relief crossing her face. The fighter pilots are eager to push through and finish the job, but maybe this is the best outcome we could hope for. "It's not over yet," Liam said, though he allowed himself a faint smile. "But we've sent a message, and I don't think Talvek will forget it." On the Zarnok's Glory, Talvek retreated to his private quarters, his mind racing. He hadn't anticipated this encounter, and the humiliation of being forced into a ceasefire ate at him like a poison. His quarters were filled with holographic projections of past victories, each a testament to the Dominion's might over the galaxy. Yet now, in the face of a threat he'd once laughed off as primitive, those victories felt hollow. As he stared into the darkness, his thoughts turned to Earth, and to the humans who had somehow defied everything he thought he knew. He'd seen alien races fall to Dominion power, vast empires reduced to rubble, their technologies absorbed and discarded as mere curiosities. But the humans, they were different. They weren't just resisting. They were fighting back with a force and a resilience that the Dominion hadn't faced in centuries. A sudden, sharp knock broke his thoughts. It was Orak, his face pale as he entered. "Commander, there's something you should see." Talvek followed Orak to the observation deck, where a small holographic screen displayed a message from Liam, one that seemed to have been sent during their initial talks. Talvek watched, his jaw tightening as Liam's calm, unyielding voice filled the chamber. "Commander Talvek, consider this demonstration a warning. Earth will not bow to the Dominion. We've learned your tactics, studied your weaknesses, and now we've shown you our strength. but our true strength lies in our resilience and in the unity of our people. We'll fight to the last if we have to." The message ended, leaving Talvek in silence. For the first time, he saw Earth as more than a minor conquest. It was a symbol of defiance, one that had cracked his own pride and shown him a terrifying truth. Slowly, with an expression hardened by reluctant respect, Talvek turned to Aurak. "Prepare a report to the Dominion High Command," he said quietly. "The humans may be more than we anticipated." Aurak nodded, his gaze wary. "And our next move, Commander?" Talvek's gaze lingered on the display. The image of the tank's relentless assault still burned in his mind. For now, he murmured, his voice a mix of dread and fascination, "We wait, and we learn everything we can about them." Because for the first time in his life, Talvek knew he faced an enemy who could shatter even the Dominion's might. As days passed, the uneasy truce between the Draz-Kar Dominion and Earth Defense Force held, but it was a tenuous peace. Reports streamed in from both sides, scrutinizing every detail of the other's tactics, strength, and vulnerabilities. Each faction knew they were on the precipice of a much larger conflict, one that could decide the future of countless worlds. For Commander Talvek, the days were filled with bitterness and reflection. He moved like a ghost through the Zarnok's glory, his once proud swagger replaced by a cold, calculating demeanor as he absorbed every intelligence report on Earth's military capabilities. His once firm belief in the Dominion's supremacy had been irreparably shaken, and he was left with the gnawing awareness that the humans were far more formidable than he could have imagined. Liam Keller, on the other hand, carried on with a tempered confidence, knowing that Earth had, for the first time, shown its hand to an interstellar empire. But he was aware that Talvek was a dangerous man, unlikely to let go of his pride and defeat so easily. They had rattled the Dominion's confidence, but whether that was enough to secure a lasting peace was another question. The standoff reached a boiling point when, 1 week after the battle, Talvek received an encrypted transmission from Dominion High Command. Commander Talvek, the disembodied voice of High Command, boomed through the holographic display, cold and authoritative. "Explain this report about the Earth forces. Is it true that they overpowered you with a single armored vehicle and a squadron of primitive fighters?" Talvek's eyes burned with indignation as he responded. "High Command, the humans are deceptive in their strength. Their machines may appear crude, but they have integrated a resilience and strategy that we underestimated." The voice on the other end seemed to pause, the silence heavy and judgmental. "This is unacceptable, Talvek. The Dominion does not bow to primitive worlds. The humans will pay for this embarrassment." Talvek's pulse quickened. He knew what that meant. High Command was preparing to launch a full-scale assault. He could almost see the fleets mobilizing across Dominion space, the countless warships rallying to overwhelm Earth and extinguish any resistance in an overwhelming show of force. But for the first time in his life, Talvek felt an unexpected pang of guilt. The humans had stood their ground, not out of ambition, but out of a fierce sense of loyalty to their world, to each other. They had fought not to conquer, but to survive. It was a feeling he hadn't known since his earliest days as a young soldier. "High Command," he began carefully, "I must advise caution. These humans possess a resilience I have not seen in other species. They may yet prove an asset if we approach them differently." "Enough," the voice snapped. "This is your chance to redeem your failure, Talvek. We expect Earth to be fully subdued, with no further complications. Mobilize at once." As the transmission ended, Talvek's gaze hardened. High Command's orders left him no room to maneuver. Earth would either submit or be annihilated. Yet a strange thought lingered. The words of Captain Keller haunted him, a warning that Earth would fight to the last, that their resolve was unbreakable. Could he, in good conscience, lead the Dominion into a battle that might not only devastate Earth, but also cost countless lives on both sides? That night, Talvek stood alone on the observation deck, staring into the void. He recalled each moment of the battle, the tank rolling forward, unstoppable and defiant, the fighters that had darted through his defenses with almost supernatural agility, and the calm resolve in Keller's eyes. Something about those moments had shifted him, had revealed a side of himself that he thought long buried. When Aurak entered, his expression was grave. "Commander, the fleet is ready to mobilize. High Command's orders are clear. Talvek glanced at him, then turned back to the stars. Orak, have you ever questioned why we fight? Orak looked startled. Commander, we fight to expand the Dominion's rule, to enforce its power. Yes, that's what we're told, Talvek replied, his voice soft, reflective. But these humans, they fought not out of conquest, but for each other. For their home. There's a strength in that, a kind of loyalty we cannot command by decree. Orak hesitated. Are you suggesting mercy? Talvek let the silence answer, though the decision had already begun to form in his mind. Prepare a communication to Captain Keller, he said quietly, his voice steady. Inform him that I wish to negotiate without the approval of High Command, if necessary. Orak's eyes widened. Commander, that's treason. Perhaps, Talvek said, unflinching. But if the Dominion's honor lies in its strength, then what honor remains if we destroy those who merely wish to defend themselves? Orak held his gaze, seeing in Talvek a conviction he had never witnessed. Slowly he nodded, acknowledging that his commander had already made up his mind. In a short time, the message was transmitted across the narrow truce line, reaching the Resolute. Liam Keller sat in his quarters, tension winding through him as he read Talvek's request for a private negotiation. His instincts told him this could be a trap, yet a part of him, a part that respected his adversary, believed that Talvek was sincere. With a sigh, he sent a message back, agreeing to meet on neutral ground. The two commanders met on the barren surface of another desert planet, each escorted by a single officer, weapons holstered as a gesture of trust. They stood facing each other, surrounded by nothing but silence in the bleak expanse of the desert, the weight of their respective empires pressing down on their shoulders. Talvek was the first to speak. Captain Keller, he began, his tone cautious but earnest. I didn't request this meeting to repeat empty threats. I've seen the strength of your forces. You have earned my respect. I don't wish for more needless bloodshed. Liam regarded him with wary eyes, though he detected no trace of deception. Then tell me, Talvek, why are we here? Talvek took a deep breath, the choice he was about to make rattling him to his core. High Command has ordered a full-scale invasion of Earth. They see your resistance as an affront, a challenge to the Dominion's supremacy. But I believe it's a battle we don't need to fight. If I refuse, I may face death or dishonor, but I am willing to take that risk if it means sparing both our people. Liam's surprise softened into understanding. And what are you asking of me, Talvek? A pact, Talvek replied. An alliance. One that respects Earth's independence and acknowledges the Dominion's authority over its own territories. We do not have to be enemies, Captain. Perhaps there's a way forward without war? Liam considered the proposition. An alliance with the Dominion could bring Earth into a dangerous partnership, one that might not sit well with his superiors. Yet here, in the silent desert, he saw something rare in Talvek's eyes, a glimmer of humanity, or at least its equivalent. Commander Talvek, Liam said slowly, if you are serious, and if you're willing to defy your own High Command, then I'll take that risk with you. But know this Earth will never become a vassal state. We'll fight to the end for our freedom. Talvek nodded. Understood. You have my word. The Dominion will respect Earth's sovereignty, and I will see to it that High Command has no reason to question our arrangement. The two men extended their hands, a silent pact forged in the heart of an endless desert. Their people might not yet understand the significance of their alliance, but in that moment an understanding was born, one that would resonate for generations. Back on the Zarnok's glory, Talvek faced his officers, many of whom had heard rumors of his meeting with the human commander. He met their stares head-on, his voice resolute. Today we do not march to war. We have found a new path, one that will bring honor to the Dominion without the need for bloodshed. A murmur of uncertainty rippled through the room, but Oryx stepped forward, eyes filled with a fierce loyalty that Talvek had rarely seen. Commander, we stand with you. If this alliance means peace for our people, then I will defend it with my life. Talvek nodded, a wave of gratitude filling him. The Dominion was built on power and conquest, but perhaps, he mused, true strength lay in choosing to protect rather than destroy. On Earth, Liam returned to the Resolute, his mind racing with the ramifications of their truce. He gathered his officers and briefed them on the new alliance, the promise of peace sparking hope and relief among his ranks. There was a quiet understanding that they had not only fought a battle for their world, but had won a victory that might change the balance of power across the galaxy. In the days that followed, the two fleets withdrew, Earth and the Dominion parting ways, bound by a fragile yet hopeful understanding. Word of the truce spread, whispers of a new alliance rippling through both Earth and Dominion territories. It was a beginning neither side had expected, and though challenges lay ahead, a sense of shared respect grew between their people, a recognition of their mutual strength. And as Talvek returned to Dominion space, he knew he had taken a step that would echo through the ages. He had learned that power wasn't just in weaponry or intimidation, but in the ability to see strength in others, to honor those who defended their home with courage and tenacity. In the end, the alien commander, who had once laughed at human weaponry, left Earth's borders with a newfound respect, not only for their machines but for the unbreakable spirit of their people.